Many decades ago, I was in a position where I was getting divorced and I did not have stable housing. And thinking back on it, especially as I stepped into this role, consistent and trusted childcare was the only way that I was able to get my degrees, get work, and essentially get my life in order. And so I think that we oftentimes talk about, childcare from the child aspect. But there's a real tangible parent aspect of this too. Had I have not had that, I don't know what would have happened, but I knew I was able to drop my child off to people who would love her and who would teach her every day. And I could go about doing what I needed to do to get my life in order. And so when you talk about housing stability, this is a real aspect of it.
Welcome to today's podcast episode. We're thrilled to be joined by Reylene Robinson, the Executive Director of Thrive by 5. Reylene, hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. It's wonderful to have you here. We appreciate you taking the time to talk about such an important organization. And for the listeners, I wanted to say that Reylene and I have spent a lot of time together here in the past year, 2025, and will be going forward. I serve as a board member on Thrive by 5, and I'm so happy to have Reylene in this position. There's so much that has happened just in such a short period of time that she has been leading the organization. And so with that, I'm going to presume that there's a lot of folks that may not know all about Thrive by 5. So if we could just kick off and have you describe the organization and give us some insight into the mission of the organization and all the things that we got going on right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dave, for that very kind introduction. Thrive by 5 is a group that was started through Mayor Greenberg ran on a platform of every child, every 3 and 4-year-old being in an early learning setting in the city. And after he was elected, he pulled together a group. It was called the Mayor's Early Learning Action Group, which we are referring to as MELAG. And they really took some time, I think it was about 18 months, to figure out how do we make this vision happen in the city. And so they did a lot of research. They engaged with a lot of national groups. And essentially, the group found that in many other cities, an independent 501c3 organization was created, an organization that could navigate the public and private waters a little bit easier than a government entity. And that's yielded the best results in cities who have gotten to an early learning program being available for every child in the city. And so the mayor asked Ashley Novak Butler to become our board chair. And then Ashley got right to work and started recruiting board members. And Dave was on that list. And we have 17 board members from across the city. And so that brought us up to about November of last year, November of 24. And then they started the search and I was hired in February of 25. So I've just been on the job about a year. And Thrive is a startup organization in every sense of the word. We are very grateful to the MELAG group for giving us a pathway and what we needed to do. And there were 3 main pillars. Facilities, our early learning facilities, oftentimes are not in the best shape because the margins in running a childcare center are so low. They just don't have the money to reinvest into their facilities. Workforce development, the sector is plagued by low wages. Unfortunately, it's just really expensive to pay people to take care of people. And when you have 10 or 12 2-year-olds running around, you have to have adequate staffing in order for them to be cared for. And then the third one was financial assistance, and that is a couple of different areas, and we can get into that in a little bit. But that's really addressing two primary goals. One is childcare is extremely unaffordable for families. And how do we create an ecosystem in the early learning world that can be more affordable for parents? And then the second piece is what sort of financial assistance do we need to do to early learning sectors as a whole to just help stabilize and help create opportunities for growth?
So,
A lot.
yeah, that's a lot. Sounds like you guys have hit the ground running over the last year.
There's been a little running.
Um, you know, looking a little bit at your organization, and you guys say, hey, when early childhood thrives, everything works better. Why do you guys believe that childcare is, essential for Kentucky's economy?
Dave, do you want to chime in, or you want me to go ahead and?
Well, go ahead and chime in. I'll add in on there because I think that there's just so many benefits from having a healthy, a healthy situation for children and for families.
So we know from a study commissioned by the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce that the state stands to collect an additional $2 billion in revenue if they can find a resolution to the child care system. Now, that resolution includes a lot of different things. It includes having enough child care spots for children. It includes stabilizing the early learning child care workforce. And it includes supporting the sector in a way that is conducive to workers. And I say that because, if you think about a lot of the manufacturing that's coming into our country, our state, or you're looking at a lot of the trades, those are oftentimes non-traditional hours. Even if they're first shift, a lot of times people have to report to work at 5 a.m., and we have to be able to take care of the children if we want those people to come here and be a part of the great state of Kentucky. So, we're looking at this from a holistic standpoint that, we can't recruit and recruit and recruit and create a better economy if there's no place for the children to go and to be cared for, to be taught, and to be safe.
We're let's talk a little bit about how Thrive is actually working to help families and households. And Thrive obviously is a startup. It's there to support this ecosystem, but you've already really hit the ground running. There's a lot. It's amazing what's happening that I think it would be really interesting for folks to know. You had mentioned before how cost prohibitive childcare is. What is it, $11,000, $12,000 a year on average, maybe more?
Yeah, it depends on what part of the city you're in, but we have seen costs as high as 16.
Yeah, so when you see that as a percentage of overall income,
Mhm.
forget about housing costs. We all know that there's a lot of families that are already cost burdened from a housing perspective. And you throw this into it as well. You could have two-parent household, have a decent job, and still really not be able to afford childcare. We see also families. I think the statistics that Tony that you had brought up was 1 in 4 families are actually aware of some of the benefits that are offered out there in the state. So we see the cost issues. We see maybe a potential lack of awareness of what opportunities there are to help with this. You talked about facilities, Raylene. I think also I want to throw out there what you're working on with respect to helping to improve uh, the the workforce within the centers as well. So talk a little bit about some of those three areas that came from the advisory group that advised us in terms of the things that are actually happening today, because it's really a lot. And I think folks should understand that.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. One of the very first things that we pivoted fairly quickly on was a program we call Family Navigation. And what we know is that the childcare ecosystem is really cumbersome to navigate. So there are a lot of resources out in the state, in the city that will help parents find childcare. But when we talked to parents, what we heard was, yeah, I can go to this website or I can call this place and they give me a printout of all the childcare centers. And parents said, we don't know which ones are good. We don't know which ones have openings. We don't know how to pay for it. And so our family navigation team is a service that we offer to all families in the city. There is absolutely no income guidelines on family navigation. And what we're able to do is we are able to meet with the family, could be virtual, could be over the phone, it could be in person, whatever works for them, and help them sort of walk through this very cumbersome system in a way that it takes some of the work off of them. We will help a family find a payment mechanism that works for them. And that comes in a lot of different forms or fashions. It is oftentimes that we will refer somebody to JCPS because they either fit in those income guidelines or they have a child who has special needs that can be serviced by JCPS. We make referrals to Head Start, the whole 9 yards. And so a lot of times we're finding that families will make an assumption that in order to receive a child care subsidy, you have to receive SNAP benefits. And that's just not the case. Kentucky has a fairly generous income threshold for its CCAP, it's a Child Care Assistance Program, but it goes up to 220% of the federal poverty level. And so we have been meeting with a lot of parents who just didn't know that that was an option for them, just because there's not a lot of information. You kind of need to know exactly where to go to. And then we just launched our Family Access Scholarships, which is assistance for working families that are somewhere between the 221 and 400% federal poverty level threshold. So that means for a family of four, if you have an income of $128,000, you would qualify for a Thrive Scholarship to get your child into early learning. And so all of that work happens with the Family Navigation Program. It is really and truly the heart of what we're doing because the majority of our centers are not full. And we're also like stabilizing the business aspect of this by getting new children into open spaces. And so that has been a really amazing program. We have offered navigation. We've had some sort of contact with over 300 families since September.
Wow.
And with that, we're also able to tell the parent, okay, if you're looking in, I don't know, let's just say J-Town, the J-Town area for an early learning setting, we can help them find out which ones have open spaces and take that work off of them. We absolutely encourage every parent to go and visit centers, but we can start to bring some of that into a little bit more tangible plan for them. As they're looking at childcare. And so, it is something that I like to call it a concierge service because it's like tailored to every person. No family has the same needs, but it is one of our backbone programs that we're doing.
So you mentioned the income thresholds, and that's what I was saying before. I mean, you can have, two earners in a household,
Mhm.
but still need the help.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a family of four, and we all know that costs are high, and so it's how are these? Tell me how the families are finding Thrive or finding access, or are we going out? Are they somehow being drawn into Thrive? How's that
A little bit
working?
of both. So family navigation staff are embedded in about 10 community locations.
Okay.
We have a satellite office, if you will, down at the Play Cousins Collective, which is in the new Amped building. I think that's 15th and Market. We also have an office at New Life Direction Ministries, which is Dixie Highway, right at the Gene Snyder. There's a Kroger there. It's in that specific area. And then we're rotating through places like the Goodwill Opportunity Center, Goodwill the Spot, Americana, La Casita, lots of other different community organizations. However, families can also just simply go to our website, thriveby5louisville.org, and fill out a simple, I think it's 3 or 4 question form, and somebody from the family navigation team will contact them.
I think this would be in the interest of these centers, especially if there's capacity, to also encourage families to get in touch because they'll benefit as well from the additional capacity
Yeah.
and folks coming in as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Raylene, I'm not sure if you've been on our Special Works campus in Shelby Park, Smoketown area, but we on our campus house roughly about 60 children per night, and I think last fiscal year served a little more than 200 children. Now that is, up to 18 years old, but obviously a big part of our organization is ensuring stability and safety and in the form of housing, whether that's permanent supportive housing, some transitional shelters. What have you found in terms of a lack of childcare access and how that, affects housing stability?
Yeah.
Have you found that?
We have, and if you don't mind, if I could just share like just a personal snippet really quickly. Many decades ago, I was in a position where I was getting divorced and I did not have stable housing. And thinking back on it, especially as I stepped into this role, consistent and trusted childcare was the only way that I was able to get my degrees, get work, and essentially get my life in order. And so I think that we oftentimes talk about, childcare from the child aspect, but there's a real tangible parent aspect of this too. Had I have not had that, I don't know what would have happened, but I knew I was able to drop my child off to people who would love her and who would teach her every day. And I could go about doing what I needed to do to get my life in order. And so when you talk about housing stability, this is a real aspect of it. If you talk about the need for parents to work and an idea about, well, what comes first, the job or the childcare? There's lots of feelings about that, right? However, just from my personal experience, there's a real tie-in here to all of these things that are happening within our families. And childcare is one that I would really like for us to see to solve that problem, because there is a resolution to it, and empower families to be able to get their life together in a meaningful way, get on the path of what they would like to see in their life.
Yeah, we and Dave, you
Go ahead.
take it. What you were saying resonated. We just had a story, that we're kind of focusing on and highlighting, and it was of a single mom with 5 children. And, now she's on the other side of this. This was several years ago that she used our permanent supportive housing. But a piece of that was we had after school and summer programming. And so she was able to work and go to school and work towards a degree just based on, the help for her children. But yeah, Dave, you can.
No, what's coming to mind, Raylene, and thank you for sharing your personal story. Um, the generational impact of that. As we have kids and they thrive, and then our kids have kids, and their kids have kids. I mean, that's not just about impacting you in that moment, and not even your daughter, just your daughter. It's also generational impact that I think folks have to realize that that investment that we make now will continue to bear fruit generations from now and generations.
I'd like to tell you that back then, I knew it was attributed to childcare, and I was able to do all of this stuff because of that. But I didn't have that realization till, really just a few months ago, because I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean there's not enough childcare? What are parents supposed to do? I didn't put that together until I was knee deep in the work, but it makes this mission so much more meaningful.
Yeah, yeah, that's very, very powerful. One thing I want you to comment on as well. You'd mentioned Ashley Novak Butler as our chair, and the other 15, 16, 17 board members. You mentioned the city's early involvement in this, but there's lots of folks that are getting involved. 501, it's Thrive by Five is a separate 501c3. It's a nonprofit private nonprofit organization. What do you see as, how is the community embracing this in terms of its support, recognition of the need, and not to be crass or anything, but sometimes support, can be embodied in financial resources and helping us do the things that we need to do. I've always said that, even at St. Vincent de Paul, that, there's such abundance in our community that, if we really get behind and people understand the issues that we have, and if we're able to create a level of empathy, we can take care of these. We can certainly move forward with a lot of these issues that we see. One of them being childcare, I think. And so, what are you seeing so far in terms of the enthusiasm in the community and the support in the community? Not just business wise, but individuals as well.
Dave, it's been overwhelming in the very best of ways. And our community of early learning centers are thoroughly excited. And if you think about where are the places in our system, and I'm using system kind of as like community, where there is an opportunity for daily interaction with the family unit, there's not many places, right? So even if you talk about school, right, there's usually a busing situation or drop off, right? But with early childhood education, you are talking about parents who are going into a center, meeting staff to get their kid and talk about their day. And there is there could be like a magical component in there if we could get a supported system of how are we working with those families so that they're supported through our early childhood centers, because they're the ones seeing them every day. So we've seen a tremendous amount of enthusiasm from the providers. The community as a whole, I think that the majority of people recognize that we have some issues in the sector. How you solve them, I think everybody agrees on that. But then when you get to how you solve them is kind of where we see a little bit of division around that. But there is consensus around we've got to do something. And then when you take it to like our donors and community organizations who are stepping in to help, it's just been fantastic. I mean, we've had a very warm welcome from donors. But when we're talking about groups like the Louisville Urban League, and, meeting with them about, early childhood education, and they have this amazing idea of their urban seniors job program. Like, how do we embed those seniors who are in this job training program into our early learning centers? Because that will be beneficial for the children and for the senior. And so pulling that together, which funding for that already comes through a federal source for the Urban League. But how do we retool it to benefit the early learning sector? It could be rocking babies or serving lunches or helping parents get kids in the center. There could be lots of things that would happen that will help seniors stay connected to their community, but also for the children. Working with Kentuckiana Works on how are we engaging and providing early childhood education as a career pathway in our one-stop centers. And so all of these different pieces and parts, I don't know that when we first went down this path, we knew that we need to have, the local workforce development board front and center at the table in order for us to make strides in that. But they have come in and they've stepped up and they've created a pathway for us to do this where we never thought it was going to happen.
Have you guys found, I know each state is different, but in terms of the research and planning stage of Thrive by Five, did you guys find any aspects to how other states have success in childcare in terms of maybe some things you can emulate or imitate?
Yeah, so I spent some time talking to Cincinnati. They have Cincinnati Preschool Promise, Denver, they have Denver Preschool Promise, and then in Louisiana as well. And one of my major questions is, please tell me what not to do. Please just tell me, just save us all the time and tell me not to go down this road. And that's been an equally interesting answer, even as much as what I should do. And so we know that tuition assistance is key to increasing access. There's no way around it. It has to be done. And Cincinnati and Denver and New Orleans, all these cities have done a really great job with assistance for families. So that was one thing. One of the other things that we've really talked about is how we're supporting the early childhood education workforce. How are we? I mean, that's a hard job. It is just a really hard job. And we are so blessed to have so many people who love that it's a hard job and show up every day to take care of the kids. But what does it look like to support them? Is that training? We've created a fund that will remove barriers for them to get their credential or degree. Sometimes that looks like paying for books, and sometimes that looks like helping figure out a past due balance so that they can re-enroll at a post-secondary institution. So it was really around the parents and the workforce that I heard the most from our sister agencies about.
Yeah, and just to celebrate early childhood workers, because it's often a thankless job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I like the what I'm hearing too. I like the notion of how success looks with this in terms of it being kind of a public-private. You got to have both.
Yes.
And because again, I think if it's just one way, there's less opportunity. And so this notion that what we're looking at here is that it is an amalgamation of the public sector and the private sector. I mean, the mayor was early on so supportive and behind this. And so kudos to him for recognizing it. And then on the other side, you see other private foundations and individuals and organizations that you've mentioned that we probably can't even predict today as we sit here what partnerships there will be tomorrow
Right.
and the day after that,
Yeah.
and or what the funding mechanism may look like in
Yeah.
5 years,
Yeah.
right? But building that recognition, because again, Thrive by Five is not actually providing childcare services. We're that conduit to the success of the centers and the success for the families.
Yes. The partnerships have been a critical piece of that.
Yeah.
And us really looking, one of the things when I first started in this role that became really, really evident to me is what would it look like if we as a city had a fully supported early learning sector? And we don't know because there is no fully supported sector, except maybe now New Mexico, because they have oil and gas money and they're paying for all of it for everybody. But we really don't know what that looks like, because we have seen examples of organizations who really dug into workforce and other organizations who really focused on the family scholarship piece, and there has yielded benefits. But really, if we as a community wrapped our arms around early learning, the children, the workers, the parents, how does that affect our community? And so, it's been a real learning curve over the past year about how do we explain everything that Thrive does? And because it all really goes back to, there's no one simple magic wand that we can wave. It has to be all of these inputs from all these different areas.
Well, and Dave, if you have anything to add, but I'd love to hear how our listeners can kind of help Thrive by Five connect with your organization. I'm sure, Dave, you have input too, of course, since you're on their board.
Just one last parting comment before we let Reylene wrap up, is that I really think that, I know we're in the early stages, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you're really creating something that's going to be replicable. And so when we think of, Thrive by Five is serving Jefferson County. There's 120 counties in the in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so I think you're doing the hard work. You're laying the groundwork for this to be something that certainly can be replicable in other places. And so, getting the attention of the folks in Frankfurt is going to be important as well.
So anybody can go to our website, thriveby5louisville.org. Under the families tab, you can access information about our family navigation team. You can fill out a form right on the site to get those services. And again, those services are completely free and for anybody in the community. But for our early learning sector, teachers and staff, there's a section on the website for them too, where they can access information about getting assistance and lots of things that we are deploying. And I would just encourage people to visit often, because we're releasing new information on pretty regular intervals.
And there's a spot for folks to donate.
Oh, there is a spot for folks to donate. Thank you, Dave.
Support is needed.
Yes.
Support is definitely needed. As we said before, it's the investments that we make today will have lasting benefit to our community. So, Reylene, thank you so much for everything that you're
David,
doing and the hard work.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And maybe all the work, again, when we talk about generational impact, maybe all the work that we're doing here will actually reduce the homelessness challenges that we have in this community, which I think it will.
Yeah.
And I've always said it'd be great for St. Vincent de Paul not to have to even be in existence, but we know that that's not the case. We'll be needed, but certainly the work that you're doing is God's work, and will have an impact for generations to come. So thank you.
Thank you both for having me. And I appreciate you.
Thanks, Reylene.